Hello and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a Frontline update for the 28th of January 2023. Before we go to the front lines, let's have a little bit of a look at what the ISW is saying in their discussion part at the beginning of their daily report, because I think it's quite pertinent. Kremlin insiders reportedly told Bloomberg that Russian President Vladimir Putin is preparing a new offensive to regain the initiative, and that may begin as early as February or March 2023. Well, yep, absolutely nothing that we don't already know. But it does put a bit of meat on the bones. There is a discussion of whether the Russian attack will be around the Zaporizhia region. We've seen these probing attacks in Zaporizhia Oblast, but also in the Vuhledar area of the southern Donetsk Oblast. So could it be there, or could it be, as many say, in the Luhansk area? We've seen reinforcements of the Russian forces in terms of airborne units in the Kreminna area, but that could be more defensive rather than offensive. Something that is of interest is that in a place called Ternova, and this is not the first time this has happened, but Russians have broken through defenses there just northeast of Kharkiv. Now that's a bit of a worry, but it makes you wonder why they do this. This doesn't happen uncommonly. Just to give you an idea of where that is, you've got Kharkiv there. There's Ternova. Nothing ever seems to come of it. But what are they doing? Are they probing for intelligence? Are they probing to find weaknesses? Are they trying to fix Ukrainian forces there so they're not active elsewhere? I don't know. Is that a foreshadowing of possibly an attack from the north? Some people have been saying in Russian circles, quite high up in command, and I reported this the other day, there's a bit of intelligence that was leaked that they've been talk about the idea of taking Kharkiv back, or they didn't take it previously, but attempting to take Kharkiv. So that might be one of the options for a Russian counteroffensive. Okay, as we look at the shelling map, the kind of heat map, if you like, as you can see, there's these shelling that take place across the northern border. These are reported shellings from the Ukrainian General Staff, so it doesn't show Ukrainian shelling. But we've also got in the Zaporizhia Oblast fairly consistent shelling over the last few weeks, and indeed right up and down the line. So Russian artillery is active and doing its thing, causing a few problems. Okay, when we come to look at what Rebar say of the front line, so we're going to go to our first port called Kupiansk, Svatove, Kreminna front line, which looks something like this on my map. We have the Kupiansk area up here. There is actually reports that, and this is from Rebar, make of it what you will. In the Kupiansk sector, Ukrainian command is preparing for an attack on the Sinkivka-Vilshana axis. Enemy drones are scouting Russian positions along the front line. Ukrainian command has partly withdrawn forces from Kupiansk. Okay, what does that mean? Withdrawing forces from Kupiansk to the Vilshana, Sinkivka area. So this is Sinkivka Vilshana. It's been fairly quiet there for the last few weeks. Is there going to be a renewed attack, as Rebar hints, from the Ukrainians to take this area? Well, we've heard a lot of Rebar saying, well, forces are accumulating here, but nothing often comes of that. So yeah, might just be flooding the information space with rumors that are unsubstantiated. And then we come down to Novoselivska and Kuzmivka, just northwest of Svatove, where we are having this ongoing battle where the Ukrainians have taken back Novoselivska on the high ground, but they're struggling to take Kuzmivka, and that appears to be, pretty much par for the course at the moment. I'm going to just show you a bit of footage that reminds me of a sort of, how shall I explain it? This is where I get a little bit subjective, so do bear with me here. But I imagine wherever the Russians go, right, wherever they are active, everything just turns to rubble and dies. I imagine some kind of animated film where you've got, life and green and colours, and then this kind of evil cloud just ends up killing off everything that's around it. Plants wilt and die. In this case, buildings just turn to rubble, and there's nothingness and death. And that's what I feel. I feel really strongly about this. That every bit of footage I see in Marinka, Bakhmut Area, Novoselivska, in this case, you just see the imprint of the Russians, their footprint all over the land, which just squashes out life. These are towns and villages and cities that used to have buildings and life and be bustling or have activity, and whether it be farming or retail or whatever stuff going on, lives being lived. And then you look at what the so-called liberators are doing. The Russians are saying we are liberating this land from the Ukraine Nazis and all this, and all they do is kill the land. All they do is turn stuff to rubble. It's despicable in my opinion. So this is where I had my rant. This isn't part of my normal frontline analysis, and you might say, oh, you're not being objective, you're not being this. I am. This is what I see. This is what I see, and Russians need to deal with this. If you're pro-Russian, explain how this is liberation. Explain that this is this the sort of country you want to be in charge of, to be guiding, to be controlling. Look at what has happened. This is an absolute destruction, and I just imagine this creeping sense of death and destruction that pervades. Anyway, that's enough of that sidebar. Let's get on to the front line proper. As we come out of Kuzmivka, we come down towards Kreminna. Sorry, I just can't get the vision of those destroyed buildings out of my mind. We come down towards Kreminna here, and we've got repelled attacks around Ploshchanka, Chervona Pepivka, and around Kreminna. So that's all fairly usual. Now, what we do understand, and this comes from Defmon and ISW, so the Ukrainians have repulsed attacks in the area of Ploshchanka, Nevska, and Chervona Pepivka, and Verkhnyokamyanska, which is further down south from Kreminna. The Russians have sent their elite unit, 76th Guards Air Assault Division, to defend Kreminna. They are most likely south of the town. The VDV, so the airborne troops, is what the Russian forces use when they want to break through the Ukrainian defences. In this case, they have been put in defensive positions, just like they did in Kherson. They were effective in Kherson, and it's unlikely that Ukrainians will want to try to advance further south of Kreminna. So that is an interesting scenario where you have really good troops being put into the Kreminna defense, and there's intense fighting to the south. Now, the Ukrainians, we did hear about, the Ukrainians doing really well to the south. They're making inroads, and there's this encirclement of Kreminna that was imminent, with the Ukrainians doing well to the north. Well, they seem to be repelled or repulsed somewhat, the Ukrainians, from the north, and they're finding fighting hard in the south due to these the reinforcements. So things are maybe a little bit difficult, but then again, the ISW says, and this is coming from the Secretary of the General Council of United Russia, Andrei Turchak, so a Russian claiming, who visited the area, and he's claimed that Kreminna is the most challenging segment of the front line due to Ukrainian attempts to break through Russian defensive lines, following his reported visit to the area. Turchak also claimed that Russian airborne forces are maintaining defenses in that direction. So this is what Defmon is leaning on. Yeah, and that is providing a bit of a challenge for the Ukrainians. We'll see how they get on. But let's go further down south now, past some repelled attacks around here, Verkhnyokamyanska, and we come towards the northern Bakhmut region. Now, as I reported yesterday, as we come down and look at Bakhmut is here. You've got Kramatorsk behind that. Rebar made some claims yesterday that in Kramatorsk, a missile strike hit the Ukrainian targets in the industrial zone, and in the evening, Russian forces downed a Ukrainian Su-25, possibly using an R-37 missile. So that is a claim of the Russians in that area. Just to let you know that the Russians have made some slight gains just north of Bilorivka, but really just a matter of meters there. And the other thing I want to note is that Chasiv Yar appears to now be being attacked. And then this again goes back to what I was saying about Novosibirsk, that the closer Russians get to places, the more destroyed those places become. Chasiv Yar is again under fire from Russian anti-aircraft fire. So this is missiles they'd use, maybe S-300s, that they're used normally for surface-to-air missile attacks, but now they are using them in their secondary mode for ground attacks ahead of Donetsk. Regional Military Administration, Pavlo Kurylenko said, this is, the destruction that's going on there And as they get closer to Chaziv Yar, which is supporting Bakhmut as a place, you will start to see this turn to rubble like the other towns that we have seen. And this is actually going on with Bakhmut as well. So Bakhmut holds, hashtag Bakhmut holds, but the intensity of Russia's attacks is getting worse and worse. This video is said to be from Bakhmut this morning. The timestamp, weather, and lighting check out. I cannot verify more than that, but I suspect it's genuine within the last few days. So you are starting to see Russian artillery attacks absolutely pummel Bakhmut. I mean, look at that. That is Bakhmut, the town itself. So we are going to see Marinka start. Bakhmut has so far not been flattened in the way that say Marinka has, but you're almost certainly starting to see that now. Yeah, just that's the way it is. Okay, bit of geolocation here. So geolocated footage shows Ukrainian artillery striking a Russian crossing on the Bakhmut River just northwest of Sil, indicating that Russian forces have advanced northwest of Soledar up to this point. Okay, so let's go and see where we're at there. So this is in the northern area. There's repelled attacks all around here. The Russians have taken, as according to Suryak maps, this area up to the road, so they've increased their territory here up to the road. This is in the just north of the Soledar. So there's a salt mine. Soledar was being fought over for those days, and then they're pushed back here, and they're using this road as a kind of defensive line. Well, first of all, you're thinking it was the railway line, and then they got they had to retreat further and further until it's now the roadway here. But the Bakhmutovka River has been acting as a good defense certainly in the Krasnohora area, just further down south here. So Krasnohora, they've been using that river quite effectively, apparently, as we shall see. And then the river comes up here, but they've crossed it. But somewhere north of here, the Russians have had a crossing taken out by Ukrainian artillery. But it shows that they are there and they have crossed it and that they are moving westwards. But I think there's trench lines built and defenses built in this area here. And in fact, Suryak Maps talks about this. The video footage shows the Ukrainian army has new trenches built in the high area west of Soledar, the blue line. So that's on their maps. That's this area here. So you've got the road, and they've built entrenchments to the west. During the last hours, Russian troops expanded the buffer zone around the city towards the highway and began advancing north and south, trying to outflank the trench system. So the trench system goes only so far. Then if they can outflank it, come around here, then obviously the trench system is rendered somewhat impotent. So that's what's going on there. Looking at my map, that is this area, as I say, that entrenchments are being built in. And then we come further down to Krasnohora, which is here. We have claims about Krasnohora. So heavy fighting continues. This is from War Monitor in the direction of Krasnohora and Blahodatne. Since the capture of Soledar, Russian forces have been struggling to capture the two towns, although they have been launching constant frontal assaults. The Bakhmutovka River provides very effective defense there. So that's what I was saying. If we go back to here, the river sort of comes through, and it seems to be that is helping the Ukrainians to defend from the Russian advance. And as we come further down south, let's go on to some general quotes about Bakhmut. Devmon says the Ukrainians have repulsed attacks in the area of Avdivka, Bakhmut, and Klishchivka. So that's north, south, north, centre, and south. But he's not seen any evidence of movement along the front line over the past few days. No report says very little as well. Also, in short, I want to highlight that the entire operation around Soledar, I'm trying to work out what this means, has been examined, and the current leadership has been examined. I don't know what exactly will happen, but I'm sure the approach is different. I don't really know what that means, or whether some of the leadership has been reprimanded or changed as a result of what happened in Soledar. And then this kind of cryptic one. Still, there's good news in the east. These could be Bakhmut area. It could be somewhere completely different. I don't know. Where Russian troops have left a certain position. The AFU has made progress in a very important environment. If I get agreement to share it, I will. Consolidation is needed. I don't know what that means, where that is, but it's sandwiched between a tweet on Soledar and a tweet on Klishchivka, but I don't know whether it does refer to Bakhmut. So as we come further south, I won't go on to Klishchivka yet, but I don't think there's been too much movement in the eastern area. In this, I think this is a Miezo Kombinat district here. There's a lot of fighting going on, and there's some geolocation that might be worth having a little look at. So this comes from the ISW, who says geolocated combat footage shows Ukrainian troops engaging Wagner troops fighting in the Miezo Kombinat suburb of the northeastern Bakhmut, indicating that Wagner continues to incrementally advance within Bakhmut itself. And here's the footage. So here's the sort of thing that geolocators do. So northeast Bakhmut, the Skala battalion watched Wagner infiltrate to the north part of the suburb and house their enter hit at 57 and 52 seconds. Two UAF squads move up to this particular geolocation, and then 1 minute 5, a YPR, that's an armored personnel carrier, tracked armored personnel carrier, arrives and engages east at that place. So I'm going to just show you. I'm not going to play you the whole video, just show you, look, this is what's happening. So this is, there's artillery going off. There is, this is the city of Bakhmut. You can see what's going on, and you can see people in the distance do certain things, climbing over fences, so on and so forth. And then a little bit later, so yeah, you get the advancing people from one side, and then there's people climbing over that fence there. And then there's this APC sort of move off. Anyway, the point of that is, so what I would do with this information, just do a bit of real-time geolocation, is say, okay, that's interesting. So where's that taking place? I'll go to my own map and I will do a search for that location. And then that location comes up exactly here. Okay, so then it's just explaining the sort of thing I do. Then I go, okay, so we've got geolocated footage of fighting there. The Russians have, let's just get that back pointing north again and in 2D. So the Russians have claimed that they control this area, yet we are seeing a Ukrainian personnel carrier drive here, and we're seeing fighting around this area. Okay, what does that say about this? When's the timestamp of that? And trying to work out. So I haven't moved, the point is, I haven't moved my Ukrainian line there because I think this could still be a grey zone, but it's all about when that footage came out, because if that's from 2 days ago and the Russians made the advance since then okay, that all checks out. But if that was from yesterday, then the Russians don't have control over the area that's people like Syriac Maps claim they do. Anyway, that's the point. There's a bit of geolocation for you, whatever you might say, just get on. Okay, so moving down south, there's not a lot of news coming out from Orikhiv, not a lot of news coming out from Maximenko Street. I've had nothing about this area for pretty much a week. It all seems to be about Klishchivka, and that could be sensible. Why beat your head against a brick wall on the eastern suburbs and do very intensive urban fighting that's going to cost you a lot of lives, when you can make a much greater advances and encircle the city and force people to retreat. So what can we say about this area? No report says, I'm pointing out one area tonight, Bakhmut South. The situation there is, to put it mildly, bad. Fighting has already taken place near Ivanivska and the highway. If there is no battle plan other than the current approach, then there really is a big problem for the supply routes. Absolutely agreed. Syriac Map says south situation west of Bakhmut, the Russian army and DPR never mentions Wagner forces expanded the salient west of Klishchivka and entered the forest southwest of Ivaniska town. In addition, troops began advancing north of Klishchivka from the recently captured trench system. So this is that trench system there, just sort of northwest of Klishchivka, and marching towards there apparently, and then taking on the forested area just around Stupochki. So not looking good around here. It looks like the Russians are advancing in this area and also advancing north here towards Ivanivska. And as no report says, if this continues, then you will see Ivanivska fall. You'll see this road being definitely cut as a supply route into Bakhmut, leaving only this much smaller road from west to east. So that is what is happening in Bakhmut. Let's now move further down south. We'll pass Touretsk, we'll pass New York. Haven't heard anything about Krasnohorivka, this Krasnohorivka, not the one near Marinka or Kamyanka, where there was a bit of pressure previously. However, there is geolocated footage to say that Russians have advanced in Vodjanya, and in fact they are advancing a little bit in Pisky, though not a lot, and that's nothing unusual. We've seen that kind of go backwards and forwards. The ISW says there are repelled attacks on the northwestern outskirts of Donetsk near Vodyany and Nevelsky, and on the southwestern outskirts near Marinka. Geolocated footage from January 14th shows that Russian forces have advanced within Vodyany, and the DNR have claimed that they've captured Vodyany. That was back on the 26th. Geolocated footage of Russian infantry positions shows that the troops have also marginally advanced in Pisky as well. And then we'll move on to Marinka in a second. So Pisky is just down here. Vodyany is there. Nothing really else to report about this area. And we will move on to Marinka. Now, Marinka is, like, I'm not laughing because it's funny, just I don't know, I guess rebar in some sense amuses me uh, because they claim that Marinka is just about to fall. They're fighting on the western outskirts, and then they're fighting in the center again. And lots of people appear to recognize this. Although a Russian mill blogger has claimed that Russian troops are fighting in the western Marinka and seized the initiative. So who might that be? Footnote 45. That is War Gonzo. So War Gonzo is claiming that they are fighting on the western outskirt, or fighting in western Marinka, and they have seized the initiative. I've seen that from no other sources really. Defmon says repelled attacks in the area of Vodyany, Nevelsky, and Marinka. Russian claims to have captured Marinka months ago, but somehow they are still fighting in the center. And this brings me on to an Andrew Perpetua claim, which kind of sums it up. So Russians have been posting their capture of like 2 apartment buildings in Marinka so goddamn often that I wonder if the least observant rubes have noticed by now. Either Ukraine keeps successfully counterattacking, or Russia hasn't had any success in like a month or two. It is this building right here. I swear they claim to have captured it every other day. They captured it on December the 14th, for goodness sake. Just that's basically, yeah, what it's like in Marinka, which is Russians claim that they are making all these successful territorial gains, and they're either ones they've already claimed some time before, or they're just not true at all. Anyway, so that's Marinka. We'll move on to Vuhledar, which has had a lot of attention given to it over the last week. And we'll see what has happened around here. And actually, we have some fairly good news for the Ukrainians. Now, there's fierce fighting going on here. Vuhledar, as I've said to you before, is on the high ground. You've got these high-rise flats, or these apartment blocks, where they've got good line of sight down to Pavlivka and across to Mykolaiv. And the Russians have been struggling to get a foothold in Vuhledar over the last few days. They have, according to some Russian sources, taken control of this area to the east and southeast, which is more the dachas, these kind of more rural settlements, sort of buildings and whatnot. But it appears they've been repulsed. There have been various claims going on. In fact, Russians are claiming that Ukrainians are getting reinforcements from the Bakhmut area. So you think Bakhmut needs reinforcements themselves, so apparently Bakhmut are now reinforcing Vuhledar. So trying to work out what's going on there is quite interesting. They have been using the TOS-1 thermobaric strikes on Vuhledar. So Vuhledar is a bit of a hellhole, as you can imagine. Here is some footage of Vuhledar. So you see these high-rise flats, and all those brown marks are where you have had artillery strikes burning and taking out parts of these buildings. It's pretty. Yeah, there's a thermobaric strike over there. Pretty horrible place to be fighting, and the Ukrainians, by all accounts, are still well entrenched there and have had a pretty good day yesterday. So there you go. There's the thermobaric explosion hitting in the middle there. I mean, this was a sort of Russian claim a couple of days ago. Vuhledar could be mostly wrapped up in the next 24 hours. Between this and the Ukrainian collapse in Marinka, their entire front in southwestern Donetsk is bleeding. But the idea is that Marinka hasn't collapsed, and nor has Vuhledar. And I showed you some pretty horrible footage of Vuhledar being absolutely slammed overnight by artillery. It has been pummeled. There is no doubt about that. Rebar says in the Vuhledar area, Marines and DNR special forces are clearing the cottage area southeast of the city. A Ukrainian command is bringing reserves from Soledar to prevent a Russian breakthrough. Advance is slowed by dense enemy presence. The Ukrainians control have control of the South Donbass mine. This is interesting. So he's claiming. Rebar is claiming that the Russians are clearing this area out. But then you start looking at other sources, and that's clearly not the case. So Vuhledar says Defmon, Ukrainians have repulsed attacks in the area. It seems that the Russians have committed a lot of vehicles, artillery, and air assets to the offensive there. For now, it appears the 72nd and 68th Brigade have managed to fend off Russian attacks, resulting in heavy Russian losses. Even Suryak map says situation south of Donetsk in Vuhledar. The Ukrainians launched a counterattack and recaptured the eastern Dacha, forcing Russian army and DPR forces to retreat from the suburbs. Heavy shelling over the town continues. So where Rebar says that the Russians are clearing this out, other Russian sources are saying no, actually the Ukrainians are clearing the Russians out of there in a counterattack. So Tatarugami UA says, pro-Ukrainian source, Vuhledar holds the situation stable at the moment. Enemy attempts to re-establish footholds near Vuhledar to develop the assault have failed. Attempts to outflank and take control over roads completely failed. The enemy is demoralized by losses, which is why they are bringing additional reinforcements, but we'll see the nearest days if they will be able to throw them for another large assault. It's known that they are trying to return wounded people to the front lines just 2 days after the injury. Some squads and platoons sustain 80 to 90% casualties, which significantly demoralizes the enemy. The situation is still difficult, but more stable. The enemy continues to replenish their losses and additional manpower. They have lost advantages that they were able to get during the first 2 days. And there's another unit, and I've read this, the translation is that actually there's evidence that Russian forces have been shelling their own people. So this one person from Russian unit saying that we've even been shelled by our own forces. And Tendar pretty much concludes the same with heavy losses. They're able to take a small area adjacent to the city, but they've lost that today. Ukrainian counteroffensive smashed them. What was left of the Russian battle group had to withdraw. So that's that. So anyway, you can see the similar sort of claims here. Now, this is a really interesting video. The situation near Vuhledar is extremely acute. The Russians are not just storming positions, but deliberately destroying these cities, says Zelensky. That's what Zelensky says. We speak to the press officer of the 68th Brigade, 12 kilometers from Vuhledar. So this guy is 12k from Vuhledar, but involved quite a lot in the fighting. So what does he say? I think...
Could you please give us a short summary of your brigade activity here?
So, Russians are storming our positions. I'll read this to you. Hopefully he speaks pretty quickly. As they started storming Vuhledar and our positions as well, really heavy fighting continuing for 4 days, constant artillery fire, constant aviation strikes. Our brigade is trying to keep our positions, so far successfully, but Russian Marines and airborne troops are constantly attacking us. The artillery fire never stops. We've seen video evidence of that. And he continues, it was planned as a hunter's brigade to act in the forests. We do not have any heavy weapons. He's talking about his own, but due to the current situation, we are not in the front. We are a normal infantry mechanized brigade. We are a new brigade. We are formed after the full-scale invasion. We are on these positions since March. Our brigade has been here for 10 months. It is right to say you are defending Vuhledar? She asks. No, we are near Vuhledar. Brigade 72 defends Vuhledar. The road to Vuhledar goes through Pavlivka. They have recaptured Pavlivka. Sorry, I have to go back there. They have captured Pavlivka a long time ago. It's the Russians. This way they cut off the road. And now from Pavlivka they are attacking Vuhledar, attacking the 72nd and our brigades. Pavlivka is important to them. It's a transportation hub, a logistics point. Pavlivka plays a key role in the offensive of Vuhledar. Right now the situation is hard, but Pavlivka is located down below and we got the heights. So Russians have worse positions, but at the same time they have more personnel and equipment, and they are pushing and pushing up the hill. She's then speaking, and he replies in a second. Good beard, by the way. Their newly mobilized personnel arrives all the time as they suffer great losses. Many Russians are dying. We kill them. They constantly mobilize new men to compensate for the losses. They get them put uniform on them, give them weapons and say, go and attack Vuhledar. So these guys are not trained, but there are a lot of them, unfortunately. And there you go. So that's an idea of the like human waves. Yes, this is a press officer. Can you take everything, at face value? I do have the sense that this is what's going on. We are seeing that. We've seen video evidence of this. Peter Clifford says apparently, according to Ukrainians, Russians lost 109 soldiers at Mikilska near Vuhledar alone yesterday. So again, if that is true, things are going bad for the Russians, or at least they are pressuring Ukraine here and have been for days, but they are taking pretty big losses. And the Ukrainians are holding out, and a counteroffensive yesterday has proved pretty fruitful. I do want to show you this, which is about Vuhledar again. Russian forces claim success in Vuhledar. They got annihilated by Ukrainian artillery. Russian naval infantry from the 155th. Who got decimated in Pavlivka previously, and the 40th took big losses inflicted by the Ukrainian 72nd Mechanized Russia is pinned down in Mikilska, and there is evidence of this happening. Lots of sort of mechanized equipment taken out, and human, soldiers. It's been a pretty tough time for the Russians there. So it's not just that these claims are coming out nothing. There is video evidence to support that. Then we move on to the west, towards Zaporizhzhia. I've cleaned up my lines to sort of represent what I think the lines are at the moment. Reality is no news has really come out about this front line yesterday. In fact, ISW says that the lack of reporting on localized Russian offensive operations in Zaporizhzhia Oblast suggests that these operations were likely limited in scope. And then we have had, so if we look here, there's Zaporizhzhia has been hit by rockets overnight, and Heliopol has been damaged from shelling. So these are places that often get hit, but Zaporizhzhia is a main city, obviously quite a target, and Heliopol there as well, which is very close to the front line. So yeah, stuff is happening, but as in terms of artillery duels, but not a lot of news on the front line as far as whether the Russians are continuing their attacks in the Zaporizhzhia Oblast. No real news about the Kherson area, so it doesn't look like there has been any movement there, just the normal artillery duels. Rebar reports on artillery duels continuing there. Anyway, thank you very much. That's the end of the Frontline update. Please like, subscribe and share. Thanks to all your support in all the different ways you do. All the ways you can do that for the channel are down in the description below. Please like, subscribe and share. As I've said, take care, and I will try and speak to you later.